Chilly here with Sarah Stellus Moon. This is Jupiter, our Venus day. Jupiter 2020 in Cancer. Venus in Cancer. Right now separating from the square to Neptune. Moon in Leo, in the middle decan of Leo. And the Sun with Uranus, Sedna, Mercury, Aldebaran. Okay. With Venus in the 12th house. Mercury, Aldebaran, Uranus, Sedna. Midheaven, Venus sign, conjoining Mars, that sextiles Venus. Well, I want to talk about the orgasmically birthing lineages. And this is where the orgasmic birthing lineages basically have preserved something that from outside of those lineages, it looks like everything looks like an approximation next to that. And a lot of people talk about, the repression of the feminine and so on and so forth. The grand missing was the orgasmic birthing lineage. Now, these are lineages that we probably, how should I say that? They by orgasmically birthing, they're shifting timelines. And the voice matters. The voice matters. All of the timelines that we have, I talked about the pillars of like the golden ages, and those lineages are like pillars that we attune to. They have a frequency. The infrastructure is built for that. That when we talk about rejuvenating what is set in stone, that is the grand missing. They are antidoting the breeding farms. Now, if we take the breeding farms as one point, and we take the orgasmically birthing lineages, then the meeting of these two oceans is where we call now, where we say, the feminine is rising. Oh my gosh, Mary Magdalene was not a whore. But from those lineages, like, what is a whore? Is a woman that is a woman. And now we understand why it was difficult to have orgasmic birthing in your side of the cosmology of the world of the everything of those timelines, because if there's no concept of a woman, it kind of makes sense. No, there is a woman. Okay. Then what is then why? And everything compounds to, why do your houses, do people actually live in those structures? Yes. How do they give birth? How do they make love? What are those structures over there? They're office buildings. Okay. So but they look almost the same as the buildings that people live in. Yeah. How do they make? How do they make? There are special buildings for that. They look like the office buildings, and to not make noise. Oh, uh, don't you like explode the entire city every now and then? Yeah, we call that A bombs. It drops once in a century. Isn't it like more simple to build infrastructure that allows for making love, birthing? No, people birth. How? People, do you know what the birth is? Is a baby comes from here, inside, outside. The amount of orgasmic voice, just the orgasm, okay, could, if the infrastructure is not well built, destroy a building. Now, without practicing cervical orgasms before that, in various birth allowing positions, it's very difficult to just logic, basis, doesn't exist in entire Western society. We talk about ancient civilizations, Lemuria, Atlantis, Tataria, I don't know. But if a woman practices the pre-for orgasmic birthing, she begins to be the outcast of society by women. Nobody wants that living next door. Yeah, but the trafficked children that wake up screaming and then are medicated and called high functioning autistic, then and everything, whether from school to welfare to whatnot, is raising them to be criminals against humanity. That's okay. Just think when people talk about, spirit rooms and resonance and frequency and like the orgasmically birthing lineages is that's the frequency. The room has to sustain that. It sustains an earthquake as well. The energy of the soil, the well-being of the people. We're talking about a sick house. Think about where people did not have a concept of hospital, the transitions of life and death. Now, here is the process that is happening right now. Definitely the feminine is rising. And each one of the voices is kind of like, oh, there used to be cities with resonance and frequencies. Amazing. Oh, actually, in the Bhagavad Gita or the Devi whatnot, um, Indian women don't actually act like that to one another. We need to change that in society. Oh, Mary Magdalene was not a hoe. Wait a second, all these people out there that we call, the bankers and the oil companies and the AI conglomerates, they're the pedos. They're generated fetus. They're in power and so on, but now all of these voices are like a compounding factor that each one of these voices brings out the missing in the other ones. Now we think about forgotten knowledge, but when we think about what collapsed and why, because if we just build spirit rooms and hospitals with good resonance, definitely we made a milestone. If we just drop the Peter rings, we definitely made a milestone. If we learn more about orgasmic birthing, we definitely made a milestone. If we begin to combine it all together, we are understanding what we're birthing with that. And from the concept of the orgasmically birthing lineages, of course, the infrastructure allows to sustain, and we have these spherical rooms or these egg-shaped, basically, walls that. Why the egg shape? Because the egg can hold a lot of weight, but we also have the place of the resonance and the frequency. It's all taking us back to the, a woman giving birth orgasmically. She could be anywhere. She could be at a public place. She could be, the water breaks. I saw a couple of videos about the water breaks. The juncture between Pisces, water of preconception, and Aries, the head of the baby, is literally the water breaks. So a woman could be literally everywhere. Boom, the water breaks. She's having a baby. Okay, it means that at that point, it's an orgasmic birthing. It has resonance. It means that at every, you know, from the time that the water breaks until the baby is born, and sometimes it's like mommy gets the towel and the baby's born. Sometimes it's hours upon hours or days, but sometimes it's just as simple as that. Literal stories that I heard about women, that I heard from women. A woman was giving birth, the water broke, tried to reach out and say, "Oh, mom, give me the towel." The mother went to bring the towel, and she was like, "Oh, look, here's the baby." From that to 90 hours birth. Various stories. So, what was the infrastructure designed like to be compatible with the orgasmic birthing woman? It had to sustain, every structure had to sustain the waves of a woman having a cervical orgasm, birthing a baby. Frequency wise, a structure can sustain an earthquake if it sustains that. There had to be enough space at every place that would be a public place as well. It would also mean that the children will be born, that the birthings would be by a big orgasmic. The water breaks a big orgasmic wave, or waves upon waves, and the baby appears. Huh? Okay, wait. Now, what kind of architecture would have been born in those lineages that accommodates for orgasmic birthing? Any of the residues of rape culture, like the Christians calling Mary Magdalene a whore, or the concept of torture as salvation, cannot, it dissolves around these frequencies. It's like the structure that was not meant to sustain an earthquake. The anger that the, how should I say that? The entire trajectory of corrupting the infant is not compatible with that. Now, if we talk about what sustained, even in the face of highly patriarchal societies, it was always either a matriarchy or a place that is the closest to the orgasmic birthing lineage. We talk about strong women, shiny women, radiant women, successful women, you know, people fearing the light or fearing the voice or fearing, and it's men and women. But the voice of those lineages, it it resonates in a frequency that is terrifying to demons. And demons in the sense of, how should I say that? Because demon can also be, I don't know, beta per se can be considered a diamond, or it is terrifying to the shadow aspects within society. This is where people duck and hide. They say, oh no, that is too much. That is the basis. If I make the equivalent to using psychedelics as healing, which was a part of MK Ultra experiments and so on and so forth. Terence McKenna, when he talked about psychedelics, he said, "You start at the it starts at your so-called trip starts at the library, and you stay there for quite some time." And when he talks about when he was finally taking psychedelics, now I never took psychedelics, and Terence McKenna himself died of a brain-related issue, so I'm not advocating for psychedelics. Um, he talks about a lot of the people that have bad trips were just not taking enough. And if I make the analogy to the orgasmic birthing lineage versus the waves of feminism before that, now I make that connection first and foremost to myself. Because it was basically, we were not asking for enough to birth a child, to birth, whether it's a physical child or the desired timeline. The world is changing to unprecedented ways. Is shifting the foundations towards the orgasmic birthing lineages. And there probably are way more things that are still coming through. Because now we have the process, but what is it birthing? First of all, what is orgasmic birthing? It's not about transmuting pain to power. Cervical orgasms is from within to shake the whole body and allow the resonance of love frequency when the baby is born. It's ushering the baby into the world, but have so much love, so much joy, so much pleasure that everything, the entire world around shakes And anything that is struggle diminishes in the face of the new world. That's the foundation. Nothing around that doesn't match that frequency can stay around that frequency, both within and outside. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a place in the world. We live in the place that was not around that frequency so much as just the sound of that frequency, just somebody voicing that, just somebody talking about it shakes the world. Okay, when I talk about just practicing the things that I didn't even know were called the preparation for orgasmic birthing. Everything around was shaken. Both the neighborhood, people around that were from different countries, people that I never met in person. Because it's like there is a sound, it's like they try to, there are resonances from alien planets. And we project onto these alien planets many things. But in a world that grew around Mary Magdalene being a repentant, whatnot, those things sound, nobody is like, it's a big light that nobody knows exactly how to contain. And it's birthing something in the world. There are so many civilizations, modern, that their entire, I'm not just talking about metrics, but also outside of metrics, their entire concept doesn't, there's not even words for that. And those were shaken. The volcanoes were rising, the 9/11s were 9/11ing, like, and people didn't know even how to define that. What is it? Now, think about something that by just being creates chaos. And think about Aries ingressing to Taurus in the mid 2040s. Okay, the orgasmic birth. I think even of the finest stories. I gave the story of a BIPOC woman that gave birth. She wanted to give birth in a hospital. The doctor says, "Oh, it's gonna take time," and so on. Oh, yeah, yeah, and leaves her to be. And she says, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not giving birth here." Then she calls a doula. Doula falls down the stairs. World collapsing. Literally, the doula falls down the stairs. The private doula, okay? They were living in a van, homeless. They were, and then she called some friend. Eventually, they were staying at the home of that friend. So that baby was birthing. It was coming to the world with a home. Now, why was the birthing so difficult? Because around the Second World War, many of the doulas were BIPOC. And because of racism, they took them away. But here's the thing: during slavery, the BIPOC women were facilitating birth, caring for the children, but they didn't even have time to have children of their own. Now there's certain people that were like, kind of like, oh, there's a newborn is there, and the neighbor's like, oh, come hold the baby for the first time. It's like, of course, it's a lovely, beautiful creature. Also a big baby, so I wasn't afraid to hold it. I remember I was a big baby, so my mother, she was afraid she will have, a small, frail thing, and eventually I came out, I guess it's okay. But I was like an eel. And so, um, and then when a person, then a business coach says, okay, it's like birthing a baby to have a business. And I'm like, you're talking to a child-free person. The person say, okay, but I need to connect with notions of like maybe orgasmic birthing. Everybody suddenly has problems. It's not, they were the ones shoving the baby to my hands. And they don't know how to deal with that. Tend to the thing stagnant in my body is essential oil. Now it's also the scent of the essential oil is the issue. But it was a toenail fungus for 3 years, nobody cared. Oh my god. It's when I treat it that now, this is just one example of how, and I'm sure it happened to so many women and men or couples. And then people say, okay, that not, that not, that not. That they needed to do away with things. The new spaces also needed to be created for that. So suddenly being became a rebellion over nothing. Because those beings, they were shaking the foundations of society. Now, and then several years later, 2019, it was the death of Epstein and so on and so forth. Died, not died, I don't know. Schrodinger's Epstein. But okay, then there's the Epstein dossiers. Now, first of all, it's also human. Let's say let's say there's a company, is a merger and acquisition in the company. People know that a lot of people are going to be laid off. They go back to drinking their coffee. It's human. It's true. And then there is that thing that the waves that shake the frequency and destroy what is no longer, what is outdated. Dissolve, destroy, decompose, and it exposes, okay, what were all this, what the problem was not the return of the orgasmically birthing lineages. And they return through the existing people. Wherever they exist on earth, let's say outside of here, is like, oh, if I YouTube orgasmic birthing, there is one podcast, and then there are several interviews not related to the podcast. That's it. And then it's like, well, the Epstein project was a breeding farm. That makes sense. Now, everything, if we think about the old, anything, you think about the infiltration of the Epstein dossiers, essentially the core was a breeding farm. What were they birthing in the world? And think about the orgasmic birthing lineages. Now, remember, before, around the Me Too, when we learned about, abusive relationships. So there were the red flags and so on, and then people paid attention, wait a second, my parent also has some behaviors like that. And people began to hold the parents accountable. They just say, okay, this is not. Now, for many, it was the minor things was usually lack of awareness. Then they began to hold the boss accountable, the peers accountable, even of themselves. Then the governments. Then that which runs their government. Now, these frequencies, how should I say, they flood the system. Not because they intend to, not because they're rebellious, they just are. So, none of the existing models is compatible with even delineating them. And everybody tries to figure out what it is. People try to get control of what they don't know. But yet they need to understand. So now, if they seek to understand it, to control it, they're already not in the right frequency. And this is where how should I say, to match the frequencies of the people that are discovering themselves simply by the vicinity of those frequencies, then we see more and more things dissolve and more things declassified and more things suddenly remembered. But they can't coexist with those breeding farms. Now there's a call to double the population by 2036. Think about um, think about the commercialized media. It's like, if I think about a circle and I try to think about, let's say, I'm going to say the approximate of a circle using straight lines. Neither the perfect circle nor the approximate of the circle with straight lines is, if I was painting, none of that, neither this nor that would be the shape. And so all the sciences, it looks like all the sciences cannot comprehend or cannot properly translate that shape or that, okay, but it's because they originated in policies and sciences that originated in cloning farms. Now, and yet the orgasmic birthing frequencies are very possible to learn because they are aligned with if we think about the frequency of orgasmic birthing, it clears up the space. If I think about this story, lady tries to give birth at hospital, she gets out, the frequency of the hospital not compatible. Naturally, the move of her saying, "Oh no, I'm not giving birth here," she was focused on giving birth, but naturally the surrounding it creates an upheaval. And the doula literally fell off the stairs. Now the doula is gonna need to be at hospital. She can go to that hospital. She can stay if they give her something that subdues her pain. Then she can stay, but hopefully there's no the doctors like was the case of Pulicot and everything is okay. Yes, I hope this was not. Yeah. Then this couple, they were homeless people, lived in a van. She calls her friends, gave birth. But the home she gave birth, they also lived. Found the right frequency. Now, the attempt to I think about the attempts to house people. House needs to be compatible for orgasmic birth. In trafficking places, not compatible. Even when it is regal. The regulia needs to be compatible with orgasmic birthing. What can I say? And that, also means that the baby needs to stay alive. And the mommy and the daddy or whatever. So, now, the place is vacant. Is what I'm saying. And if a place is not fit for that, and it tried to, let's say, profit off of, then the entire state. Now, Even the women that are enraged, they need to ask themselves, were they seeking to profit off of raped tenants? Now, this grand collapse is a big transition where, with Uranus said now, everything that was trafficking, negating orgasmic birthing lineage on the line of breeding farms meets the resonance of the orgasmic birthing lineages in the sense that its projects can't continue because the orgasmic birthing lineages are here. Think about this woman that left, first of all, a BIPOC woman, wanted to give birth in a hospital. It's not that she was against hospitals, no, the natural thing. She saw the treatment of the doctors, not compatible. So she called a doula. People are not compatible. Oh wait, they were living in a van. Eventually she gave birth. Orgasmically, rawly, safely, freely, at a place that was actually good, and then they stayed to live there. Bye, friend. What do we have here from this story, from this birthing story, from this orgasmic birthing lineages returning? Hospital is if somebody, God forbid, falls down the stairs. But why would that doula fall down the stairs to begin with? It's a conjoint of the infiltration of the Epsteiners, and they could have been targeted an individual, and the lack of match between the birth that was coming to be, that was supposed to be with a house. With just the doula, it wouldn't be a house. Now, the entire reason BIPOC people not giving birth but only assisting was a desire to depopulate their bloodline, but take over their estates, their wealth. Ma? No. But how was that allowed to begin with? Black people are always grateful, and they always work hard. I was joking, there was a kid on YouTube that had a dad that was black, a mommy that was white, and the dad had such discipline. he couldn't see the boys lying down. Even I come from third generation to Holocaust survivors. My mother had a problem seeing a person rest. Like the lineage survived the working camp, for heaven's sake. Like, so I was joking about it. I said when the people would come from, to the slave traders, they would be like, oh, they give you a lift to work. They give you get a house, you get to stay there. That's how people get enslaved, folks.